All right, let's dive in. We're kicking off a massive deep dive, folks. 61 parts covering the whole history of philosophy. And for our first stop, we're heading straight to ancient Greece to grapple with Aristotle's metaphysics.
We've got an awesome guide for this one. Episode 19, Aristotle's Metaphysics. Plus, we'll be pulling in some extra context from Bertrand Russell's History of Western Philosophy, just to kind of see the bigger picture, where Aristotle's ideas fit in.
Now, metaphysics, it sounds a little intimidating, maybe.
Sure.
Big questions about reality, existence, knowledge. But it's actually way more interesting than it sounds. Trust me.
Oh, yeah.
Aristotle, he was trying to figure out, what does it even mean for something to exist? What makes a thing what it is? And how can we even know anything about the world?
It's pretty fundamental stuff.
Really is.
And he actually got there in part by disagreeing with his own teacher, Plato.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Plato, he had that famous theory of forms. He thought the physical world was just a shadow of a higher realm of perfect eternal forms, like a perfect tree.
So there's a perfect pizza out there somewhere. I'm into that.
Well, Aristotle wasn't so sure about the perfect pizza. He thought those universal concepts, like treeness, they don't exist separately from the actual things we experience. They're inherent in the things themselves.
So for Aristotle, the essence of a tree isn't off in another dimension. It's right here in every tree we see.
Exactly. That's where substance comes in.
Okay.
Substance for Aristotle, it's like the fundamental building block of reality. It's the underlying stuff of everything. And he breaks it down into two key parts: matter and form.
Matter? That seems pretty straightforward. Like the physical material, the stuff things are made of?
Right. Think of it as the potential for something to exist. But it's form that gives that matter shape and structure, makes it a particular thing.
So if I have a lump of clay, that's the matter. And if I mold it into a vase, that's giving it form. That's what makes it a vase and not just a blob of clay.
Perfect example.
Okay, good.
And what's really interesting is that Aristotle connected this idea of form to the purpose of a thing. He believed everything has a specific function or goal, what he called telos.
Telos.
So the form of a vase isn't just its shape, it's also its purpose. Its potential to hold water, flowers, whatever.
So is he saying a rock has a purpose too? What could that even be?
That's a question that puzzled even people back then. Aristotle argued that everything, even inanimate objects, strive toward their own unique goals. Now, whether a rock's goal is simply to exist or be part of a larger structure, that's debatable. But the main point is that for Aristotle, to truly understand something, you need to understand its purpose, its place in the grand scheme of things.
It's like he's searching for the underlying blueprint of reality, the forces that drive and shape everything. It's no wonder he's considered one of the founding fathers of Western philosophy. But he didn't stop at the physical world, did he? Episode 19, Aristotle's Metaphysics, it also touches on his ideas about the mind and soul.
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting. He tackled the mind-body problem. How are our minds, which seem non-physical, connected to our physical bodies?
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is, and he makes this distinction between soul and mind.
So what's the difference? Aren't they the same thing?
Not for Aristotle. He saw the soul as being closely tied to the body, responsible for basic functions like movement, growth, even perception. It's what animates living things, but the mind,
Yeah.
that's something else entirely.
Something more powerful.
He believed the mind was capable of higher-level thinking, understanding abstract concepts, and potentially even existing independently of the body.
Hold on, are we talking about immortality here? Did Aristotle believe in an afterlife?
That's a tricky one, and honestly, it's something we'll probably come back to as we explore Aristotle's thought more deeply. But what we do know is that he saw the mind as being potentially eternal and separate from the body, which, raises some really fascinating questions about what happens to consciousness after death.
Wow. Okay, so we've got matter and form, souls and minds, and a whole universe striving toward its purpose. This is already blowing my mind, and we're just getting started. Back again for more deep diving, and man, that last segment really got me thinking. Aristotle's ideas about substance, matter, and form, it's like a whole new way of seeing the world, right down to the tiniest building blocks,
It's definitely a shift in perspective, and a really influential one. But as we dig deeper into episode 19, we see Aristotle wasn't just satisfied with explaining what exists. He wants to understand why things exist, what's their purpose.
Right, that's where his idea of telos comes in, that everything has a specific function, a goal. But what about us? What did Aristotle think was the ultimate goal for humans? Is he saying there's a cosmic plan that tells us what to do with our lives?
Not exactly a plan, more like Aristotle believed that humans, just like everything else, have a specific nature, and living in line with that nature, that's the key to living well. He called this ultimate goal eudaimonia, often translated as happiness or flourishing.
Okay, so not just about having fun, right?
Yeah.
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. For Aristotle, eudaimonia isn't about fleeting pleasure. It's about living a life guided by reason and virtue. Really fulfilling your potential as a human being, striving for excellence in everything you do.
So how do we actually achieve this eudaimonia?
Well, virtue's key, according to Aristotle. But for him, virtue wasn't some abstract ideal. It was something you cultivate through habits, through practice, by finding this golden mean between extremes.
The golden mean?
Yeah. I can give you an example. Let's take courage, for instance. It's a virtue, right?
Right.
But too much courage, that can lead to recklessness. And too little courage, well, that's just cowardice. True courage, for Aristotle, it's about finding that balance, that sweet spot right in the middle.
So not just being brave all the time, it's about being brave at the right moments.
Exactly. And that goes for all the virtues. Generosity is good, but too much giving can lead to, I don't know, bankruptcy. While being stingy, that prevents you from helping people. So finding that balance, that golden mean, that's the path to virtue. And virtue leads to eudaimonia.
Like a recipe for a good life. A little courage, a pinch of generosity, all mixed together with reason and good judgment.
I like that analogy. But there's another crucial ingredient for human flourishing, according to Aristotle. Remember how we talked about humans being political animals?
Right, we're drawn to living in communities. But how does that fit in with eudaimonia?
Well, Aristotle saw the polis, the city-state, as the ideal environment for people to reach their full potential. He thought that only within a political community could we really use our reason, engage in ethical discussions, and strive for that good life.
So we can't truly flourish alone. We need others to help us become our best selves.
That's a big part of his philosophy. He argued that we're social creatures by nature, and we need the support, the challenges, the interactions of a community to really thrive.
But wasn't Aristotle also kind of elitist? Like, didn't he believe some people were just naturally meant to rule, while others should follow?
You're right to bring that up. It's definitely a part of his thinking that's been debated and challenged throughout history. He did have ideas about natural hierarchies in society. But it's important to remember that he also stressed the importance of justice and fairness within the polis. He thought good rulers should govern for the benefit of everyone, not just themselves.
Okay, that's an interesting point. So even with these hierarchies, he still saw a need for ethical leadership.
Absolutely. And this leads us to another crucial part of Aristotle's philosophy, his work on logic and reasoning. He's considered the father of formal logic, after all.
Right, the syllogisms. I have to admit, though, I've always found logic a bit dry. What's so groundbreaking about syllogisms?
Well, they might seem simple on the surface, like all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. But Aristotle's work went way beyond those basic examples. He built a whole system for analyzing arguments, spotting fallacies, and building solid reasoning.
So it's not just memorizing syllogisms. It's about having a framework for thinking clearly and critically.
Precisely. And that's why his work on logic is still relevant today. It's not just for philosophers. These tools are essential for anyone who wants to understand the world, evaluate arguments, and make good decisions.
It's like he gave us a mental toolbox to help us navigate life, separate truth from lies, and build our own philosophical frameworks.
That's a great way to put it. And it's a powerful legacy. Aristotle's logic, his metaphysics, his ethics, and politics, they've shaped the way we think and argue, even today.
So we've gone from the basic building blocks of reality to human flourishing, and even explored logic and reasoning. Quite an adventure so far. But I have a feeling there's still more to come.
You're right, there is. In our last segment, we'll shift gears a bit and look at the lasting impact of Aristotle's ideas, how his work resonated throughout history, influenced everything from medieval theology to the scientific revolution.
Can't wait, this is fascinating stuff. Back again for the final part of our deep dive into Aristotle. You know, it's amazing how a philosopher from over 2,000 years ago can still feel so relevant. His ideas about reality, the good life, reason, it's all so thought-provoking.
Yeah, it really shows how powerful ideas can be. They can transcend time and culture. And in this last part, we're going to see just how far Aristotle's influence has reached.
I'm curious about how his ideas were received after his death, in the centuries that followed. We've been focusing on episode 19, which gives us a great overview, but how did those ideas spread? How did they become part of Western thought?
Well, it's a pretty fascinating story, actually. It involves Lost manuscripts, cultural exchanges, some unexpected twists and turns along the way.
Really?
For centuries after Aristotle died, a lot of his works were actually lost to the West.
Lost. So how did they come back?
Well, it's partly thanks to Arab scholars. During the Islamic Golden Age, they preserved and translated a lot of Greek texts, including Aristotle's. And eventually, these translations made their way back to Europe in the Middle Ages, and that's what sparked a renewed interest in Aristotle's philosophy.
So his ideas kind of took a detour through another culture before coming back to the West.
Exactly. And when they did come back, they had a huge impact, especially on Christian theology.
That's interesting.
Thinkers like Thomas Aquinas, they saw Aristotle's philosophy as this really powerful framework for understanding God, the world, even the human soul.
So a pagan philosopher ends up influencing Christian theology. That's pretty wild.
It is. Aquinas was amazing at bringing different ideas together. He saw that Aristotle's emphasis on reason, logic, the natural world, it could all work with Christian beliefs. He used Aristotle's ideas about substance, form, and purpose to build these elaborate arguments for the existence of God, the immortality of the soul.
So even though Aristotle lived long before Christianity, his ideas found a new home in this evolving religious tradition.
Precisely. And it wasn't just theology either. Aristotle's influence extended to science as well.
Oh, right. He was a big believer in observation and analysis.
Absolutely. And even though some of his specific scientific theories turned out to be wrong, his emphasis on observation, classification, logical reasoning, that laid the groundwork for what we call the scientific revolution.
So, like, he provided a blueprint for the scientific method.
Exactly. Thinkers like Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, they revolutionized our understanding of the universe, but they were building on that foundation that Aristotle laid.
So we can trace a line from Aristotle's ideas about logic and observation all the way to modern science.
Absolutely. His ideas had this ripple effect throughout history, shaping how we approach knowledge, ethics, politics, even our understanding of the cosmos.
That's incredible. Makes you wonder what he'd think about the world today, a world shaped in so many ways by his own ideas.
It's a question that still fascinates people today. Philosophers, historians, anyone who's curious about the power of ideas. Aristotle's work really pushes us to think critically, to question what we believe and keep searching for truth and wisdom.
Well, listeners, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the mind of Aristotle. Hopefully you've gotten a taste of his amazing ideas and a glimpse into how they've shaped history.
And remember, this is just the beginning. We have 60 more deep dives to go, exploring all sorts of fascinating thinkers and their groundbreaking ideas.
So stay tuned, keep those philosophical fires burning, and get ready to dive into the next chapter of our adventure.